So I'm a Bombay girl. I've been born and brought up here, and it's my home. I love this place. Um, I had a wonderful childhood growing up in a mixed home. My mom was Protestant and my dad was Parsi or Zoroastrian. So I grew up in a house where I had a very loving mother. I unfortunately lost my mom when I was really young. I was 8.5 and my sisters were 17 and 19. So we grew up in a house where our childhoods were split into two different halves, where we had before when mom was there, and then after when we had to fend for ourselves a little more. My family and my house and my home are the closest thing to me. First it was my parents, and then my sisters, and now my life partner Ajay, who this close unit, and my dog Chichi, who's like my baby now. But this unit is what I consider home. So the home unit is very, very important to me. It's essential. I don't think I would be the person I am today if not for having all these people in my life. I think what was the most important part about my childhood was having my mom there to give us so much love and so much security. And she was like everything. She was my world, and she was a very giving person. So when she passed away, it was like my world suddenly fragmented and fractured into a completely different space. So I realized very early what family means and what close family means, and that has always been my first priority. I will put my family and their safety and happiness above everything else. When it comes to growing up a little more, my sisters, when my mom passed away, my dad obviously stepped in to take care of me, and I've lived a very, very large part of my life with my dad alone in the house, because my sisters had gone off on their lives also after a while. Zareen had gotten married, and Pari had moved to a different country and then came back and got married. So by the time I was in my teens, it was me and dad. And I guess if I have to say something, my parents were my absolute life. My mom while she was here, and my dad right through till he passed away 4 years ago. So a little bit about my parents is that my mom was a nurse. So she was a very nurturing, loving person. And my dad was a musician in the Bollywood film line in the 60s, in the 50s, and the 70s, 80s, 90s. He had almost a 60-year career, which was very illustrious. And he was a high achiever. So we came from a family which was not very religious. We did love our culture, and we love being Parsi, and we did cherish certain things about being Parsi, and participated in certain amount of prayers. And on our birthdays we would go for trips to Agyaris, which is our fire temple, and it's pretty much exclusive to Parsis only, which is something I feel that needs to change, but that's just my personal take. Kid growing up, you always second guess your parents, and you're always rebelling against the force, and trying to pave your own way and your own path, and not wanting to fall into other people's opinions about stuff. And dad had some strong opinions, so he and me had a lot of bickering that we did. I would have to say for him today, looking back in hindsight, I would say wisdom, because there were so many things that he was right about, which I'm learning slowly and steadily. And as I grow older each year, I look back and I say, oh, damn it, dad was right about this as well. Oh, he was right about that as well. So yeah, wisdom. He was a teacher for me, a big time a teacher for me. And for my sisters, I guess oneness, because the three of us have this special bond. We have this unique connection that I have not seen in many brother-sisters or sister-sister or brother-brother combinations, even in friends. In fact, my elder sister shared one of these pictures with the back portion of three girls standing, and their braids were intertwined, and it was intertwined into one braid. And she said, this makes me think of us. And both of us were like, yeah, of course, that's totally us, So for us, I think for my sisters, it would be oneness. We're just a unit. We three of us are there for each other in times, good times, celebrations, bad times. We've got each other's backs, and nothing is going to change that. Everything comes secondary. There's no money involvement. There's no other people opinions involvement. It's just us three, and not against the world, but us three together, looking at everything that's coming ahead in future for us, for all of us. Home is not a place to me today. I guess it has always been, but I've only recently really taken in the concept of home being an experience, a unit of people rather than a place. It's not about where you live or, what you surround yourself with in terms of things. So home to me is my husband, Ajay, who I have been with for 23 years now. And my little 9-year-old dog, she's turning 9 on August 11th. So my little 9-year-old dog, Chichi, they form my immediate home today. And if I have to describe what that is like, I would say it's comfort and acceptance, because we can be totally ourselves with each other. All three of us, when we are in this environment that we have created for ourselves, simple little house with all the utilities that we need, nothing too jazzy or fancy, but we have each other, and that is home for me today. I kind of came to the end of my rope with being in front of the camera when it came to advertising, because I literally had one of the people in one of the shoots come up to me and say, and this is somebody I had told them I would like to come for a test shoot because I've had a little bit of a size change. So let me come in for a test. And they said, no, we know you. We've worked with you in the past. Come in. We know this script is just perfect for you. So I went in, and I'll give you some context. I was 14 years old at this point, and I was going on shoots alone and managing my own payments, dealing with the ad executives, because I guess like losing a mom early and having only one parent, you tend to grow up really fast. So at that point, I was pretty well versed with advertising. I had done many shoots for magazines, television, etc. And this woman, halfway through a 2-day shoot, on the first day, came up to me and said, but when we got the script, it was just perfect for you, and but you've put on so much weight. And put on so much weight in context was like a kilo or 2 kilos was the weight difference. So that's when you realize you don't want to walk in a room and be noticed anymore. And that was the last shoot I did, because I said, I don't want to be treated like this. I don't want to be made to feel like this. And I refuse to subject myself to more of this going down the line, because it's not fun anymore. It's not fun when you're being criticized for how you look. Even when you look perfectly fine, in my opinion. So, so attention can be a little dangerous game there. And it can play a lot on how you think of yourself and what you feel your capabilities are. And it can pretty much determine how the course of your life will be, because it has a lot to do with your self-love and your self-acceptance. And always thinking, am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? And that actually is something which was one of my first struggles in life. That was, well, not one of my first, it was my second major struggle in life. My first was, of course, losing my mom, which in a world itself, it's shattering. So made me question a lot of things at the age of 8. And then this turning point when I was 14, just made me say, I don't know if all this attention is going to crack up to all it's been. Yes, I have felt very unsafe walking into a specific area and suddenly catching people's notice and turning heads. And that was something that was a major part of my portion of my life, this seeking and this wanting to be loved, or not loved because I was loved by my family, but at least getting the attention of guys who I was interested in was very difficult on me and very hard. And I don't think I dealt with the situation until I came across a letter which my mom had written to my middle sister growing up, and she had said something in that letter which just resonated with me and it clicked with me, and it helped me deal with this particular aspect a lot. So she had written to my sister, don't go running after love, it'll come to you as it came to me. And this sentence just helped. My turning point came when I was around 27, 28 is when I decided to get into advertising, because I got an opportunity through a friend who was kind enough to understand my struggle of not finding what I want to do. And once he saw something that I had written, and he said, have you ever thought about being a copywriter? And he was in a big ad agency at that point, and a very senior person in that particular department. And he said, why don't you try out for this job? I mean, you can try out being a copywriter. And I literally had to ask him, okay, what is a copywriter? So at 27 is when my career really started and really took off. And I joined a big ad agency, and the insecurities are still there. But now what I felt was I was learning, right? So I was opening myself up to new experiences, being in this new career, and meeting these amazing people who I still am the best of friends with. So many people who I met in Mudra. So basically learning so much about life, learning about the work, learning about creativity, battling my own inner demons about insecurity. Now the insecurity transfers from am I good enough to is my writing good enough, and it just goes on until you finally put your foot down and say enough is enough, I'm good enough, whatever it is, it's good enough. So so I think my late 20s and then my 30s, work helped a lot in giving me that security and that feel good factor about myself, to say, hey, okay, so and so is willing to hire me for this project, which is a very prestigious project with hundreds of people would probably want this project, and I'm getting this project and I'm getting this opportunity. So okay, there must be something to me. So a little bit of dealing with stuff in that time dealt with circled around getting a little bit of external affirmation that okay, yeah, there's something to this, otherwise I wouldn't be succeeding in this field. And then later on it started coming from myself. I think in my 30s dealing with insecurity has been very easy because in a way I have found who I am. I have found the spot that I'm comfortable in. I think when you start accepting who you are as you are and start loving yourself as you are, in a way that itself is dealing with that insecurity and that issue, because it becomes a non-issue the minute you accept yourself. So when I was just falling in love with my husband, I was maybe 16, 17, and we were dating for about a week at that point, and we happened to hold hands and walk in our neighborhood, and the neighborhood gossips. So we got to hear later on that somebody had come to my family member and told them, what is Jasmine doing? She is putting down the name of your family. And what was I doing? I was holding a boy's hand and walking on the road. And this is a boy who came on the third day of dating me and saying, I want to meet your father just so that he knows that I'm dating you. He is such a decent guy. I mean, like, unheard of. And I met his family and he met my family within the first few days of us dating. So that was the first, that that judgment of that neighborhood person, actually I should thank that person, because that was the first time I stopped and I said, I no longer give a I'm going to use an explicit word here, so you're going to have to beep me out, but I no longer give a fuck about what anybody else says or thinks about me, because whether I do something wrong or I don't do something wrong, that person is still going to think what they want to think. So let them carry on thinking what you want to think. I'm going to live my life. It's my life. That was my first turning point, where I just whipped back and I said, no, I'm not taking this. I don't accept it. No one has a right to judge me based on their idea of what is right or wrong. It is my life. I'm going to make the calls as to what I think is right and wrong for me. And I did that ever since. And this I did with the support of my then boyfriend, now husband. So Ajay always supported me, and he knew how much that particular moment had hurt. And then he turned around and he said, what does it matter? Who cares what they think? And it was a aha moment. You just sometimes need somebody to say something simple to you to realize that it really doesn't matter. What that person thinks does not affect my life at all. They have no say in the whole scheme of things. And I think a lot of people let other people's opinions dictate how they feel about themselves, the decisions they take, the people they marry, what they're looking for in life, their careers. And that was something that I could never adjust with. So that was my very first tipping point. Taking a decision to slow down from work, not have a full-time situation, being able to work from home, and being happy with less. So even though I have less, I'm a happier person today. I had seen some pretty disturbing documentary type serial yesterday, which went into the Rwanda genocide of the 90s, the early 90s. And they were talking about one of the people who was being a person who was always into psychology. I enjoy watching true crime documentaries about dictators, people who are like just basically trying to understand where these people have come from in their thought process, and why it is they think the way they think, and why is it that they are propagating certain ideas. So it's very interesting for me to try and look into that perspective, not as an agreement to it, but to understand what could possess a person to do this or to think like this. So I woke up this morning after watching that one serial last night, where thousands, hundreds of thousands of people were massacred in that country. And I just kept asking myself, how can a human being do this? How can a human being bring themselves to hurt someone else, to cause physical, mental, emotional pain to another person and be okay with it? How is it possible that we could let this as a society happen today, where we see injustices and thousands of people are being affected by it, and we're not doing anything about it? We're not standing up and saying, no, this is not okay. If more people had stood up in Rwanda at that time and said, no, you cannot kill these people because you believe this tribe is bad, maybe it would have made a difference, right? Maybe it could have changed maybe somebody could have just talked to one of those people and said, this is another human being that you are killing. Have a little kindness, just show them some basic human kindness, some basic human respect. Kindness doesn't just extend to human beings. Kindness extends to everything around us. And I know I eat non-veg till date, and I'm okay with that right now. Maybe I won't be okay with that in a year. Maybe I'll do something to change that in a year, or reduce my impact. But kindness to animals is important, because animals are not like us. Animals are pure. And when I go and I feed, and I don't consider myself a regular feeder, because I just started this on a whim. I've always loved dogs, and I've had dogs since I was a child. But I started feeding these kids on the roads for only a few months, and I've come into a network now of people who have been doing this for 15 years, 16 years, 20 years, and I'm interacting with these people who have been at it again. This dog has got a maggot wound, send them to the doctor, get them treated, get them fostered, get them adopted, get them fed, get them vaccinated. They are doing, you have to, just step into the life of one of these regular feeders, into their lives for one moment, to understand what it takes, the type of internal strength it takes to go out of their way, be kind to an animal, make sure that animal is being fed, make sure that animal is not being mistreated, face verbal abuse from people around them. Luckily, I'm in a very blessed place because everybody has only been happy about what I've been doing. But I've had friends who have been doing this for many, many years, who have had to file FIRs against people because they're not letting you feed the dog in a lane. So kindness does not extend to only human species. First of all, we need to learn to be kind to humans, but we definitely need to learn to be kind to animals and stop all this nonsense, animal abuse, because it's going out of hand. And this being able to take videos and just play God in an animal's life is just it's not okay. So when I say be kind, I mean be kind to everyone and everything and every species around you as much as you can. Don't go out of your way to harm someone, because that dog or that cat is innocent. They are just living where they were born. They were put on this planet. If you believe in God, that God put that animal there for a reason. So just like you have a purpose and you have a reason to be here and living your life as authentically as you want to, let that animal have an opportunity to live life. If somebody is feeding that animal biscuits or a meal, let them. Now what is the harm? Just learn to survive as in oneness. Just be kind to everyone.
Let's untag ourselves. Let's untag each other, as we all share the same light.